Tell me about Senna and Prost then. I mean, how similar were they? How different were they? And do you think the animosity between them was real?
No, I don't think the animosity between them was real. I think they both knew that to win the World Championship, as I said earlier, you've got to have the best car. They had the best car, so they had to beat each other. And they would do whatever it took to beat each other on the track. But off the track, they were both smart enough to know that they were both making an awful lot of money. Pretty much the same, actually, because Ron wasn't in a position where he could play one off against the other because I knew both contracts. So they knew, actually, that if they left it to me, they'd both make a lot of money. And I had always said, and this has always been my sort of one of the things that I've always insisted on, and why we've been able to manage multiple clients, is that I will never, ever disclose financial details of one client to another. It's client confidentiality. You just don't do that. So if a client, even today, says, by the way, ask me a question that's out of order, I'll tell him, I'm sorry, it's out of order. I'm not answering that question. You know the rules. And it only ever happened once with Ayrton and once with Alain that they tried to get information, and I refused to give it. They never tried again. Now, that's not to say that drivers talk. They do, even today. But what they say amongst themselves is fine. That doesn't bother me. But they'll never get the information out of me.
Did Senna or Prost ever talk about the other one to you, just as a character in their relationship? I mean, when it was all breaking down at McLaren, did one of them, were you sort of in this awkward intermediary position where you were having to...
Well, if you remember the movie,
yeah,
right, which I was involved in originally setting up, because at that stage we owned the theatrical agency, and who was the director of John Player Lotus? It was his son, James Day Rees.
All right, yeah.
Right. So he came to me in the office because I think he had something to do with PFD. I don't know quite whether it was family or he was in the movie business. I think he was probably a client, actually, as a producer. And he came, do you think we can make a movie about that? And I said, fine, but you won't be able to do it without getting access to two things, the family files and Bernie's files, because otherwise it won't make any sense. So we set it up, and they went down to Brazil, met the family, and the movie was at about 95% accurate, and it was a very good movie, but it underplayed and actually didn't. The one thing they missed was actually the role of Honda. So if you think back to the movie, it talked about the rivalry between the two drivers, but what it didn't cover was the fact that Alain had won 2 championships already in 1985 and 86 before Ayrton arrived. So Alain was a McLaren man. He knew everybody there. He'd already been there since 1984. So he'd been there 84, 85, 86, 87. So 88, Ayrton's first year was Alain's 5th year. And Alain had won 2 championships and arguably should have won the 1984 one, but for the rain in Monaco, and he lost by half a point. And then Alain, in the end, won 1989 for his 3rd championship. And then Ayrton won in 1991 or 1990? 88, 1991. So Alain was a McLaren man through and through, and Ayrton was a Honda man because he came with Honda. Honda came with Senna, or Senna came with Honda for 1988. That was the deal. So there was a difference there between the two. So if Alain wanted something done, he'd use all the levers within McLaren to get it done. Ayrton was the new driver. If he wanted something done, he'd use all the levers within Honda to get it done.
Hence his loyalty when it came to that decision in
Exactly.
92.
And that's why there was a difference in the way they got things done off the track. They had a different power base within the team. So I never really got involved in that. I ran the business. I stayed out of everything to do with racing on the track, everything to do with in the garage, none of my business.
I know that Alain was frustrated that he was made out in that Senna movie to be the bad guy. Do you think he was misrepresented?
I do. And one of the things that I regret is, I helped them set up the whole movie, but then they never came back and checked a load of the facts with me. So it wasn't fair on Alain, but it also was wrong. Because if they had actually explained the fact properly, that Alain was a McLaren man and Ayrton was a Honda man, and that's how the basic dichotomy arose, I think people would have understood it better, and it would have painted Alain in a much fairer light than it did.
And did their relationship change as of Adelaide 93 once Alain Prost had retired?
After Alain left and went to Ferrari, it changed anyway.
For the better?
It was... Well, it comes down to the same thing. You've got to beat your teammate. But if your teammate is now Gerhard Berger and not Alain Prost, it's different. And we see Ayrton respected Alain hugely because he knew that he was as good as him, and he would have to pull out all the stops to beat him. His relationship with Gerhard was a little bit different. I mean, Gerhard was a very, very good driver, but he wasn't an Alain Prost. So I think Ayrton felt that he had the beating of Gerhard, whereas he wasn't automatically sure that he would have the beating of Alain, nor Alain of Ayrton either. And then when Alain went to Ferrari, and didn't, who replaced Gerhard at, Alain went to Ferrari for 1990, having just won his third championship at McLaren.
Yep.
And his teammate in the first year at Ferrari was Mansell.
Correct.
And then in 91...
Jean Alesi went there.
Yeah, that's Jean Alesi had 3 contracts that year.
Yeah, he did. Was it? It was Williams, Ferrari,
and there was another one as well. I can't remember what it was.
You clearly weren't managing him, were you?
I wasn't managing him, but he was friendly with Alain, so I kind of knew what was going on. And one contract ended up in Williams's museum. The red Ferrari in Frank's museum was payment for Jean breaking the contract.
Got it. What about when Prost retired, though, at the end of 1993? Was there an immediate thawing of relations between Senna and Prost?
100%. Yeah. Ayrton had huge respect for Alain and vice versa. And then suddenly, if your biggest rival is retiring, then it puts everything in a different light. You know, you treat the relationship as one of respect as opposed to one of rivalry.
Did Senna respect Schumacher as a driver? Did you ever talk about it?
I think it was too short a relationship to have developed into that. I mean, I think that, you know, he was a young driver, came in, did a great job in the Belgian Grand Prix, then signed a contract and moved to Benetton. And then there was that whole hiatus in 1993. There was a difference between the Benetton and the McLaren because one had the factory engine, one didn't. And then in 94, there was the issue about whether the Benetton was strictly kosher or not.
Did Senna discuss that with you?
Yeah. But the one who had the strongest views, actually, about the 1994 Benetton was Gerhard.
And he would discuss with Senna and you about the Benetton?
More the two of them discussed it together. Because as I said, I didn't really get involved in the technical side of things.